Hi, this is Sean D'Souza from psychotactics.com, and you're listening to the 3-Month Vacation Podcast. This podcast isn't some magic trick about working less. Instead, it's about how to really enjoy your work and enjoy your vacation time. This is the 3-Month Vacation. I'm Sean D'Souza. I remember growing up in Mumbai, India. Christmas wasn't just a day for us kids, it was a chain of events that went back at least a month or more. I don't recall when it would all begin, but one day my mother would bundle us all to the cloth store. This was because we had to have new clothes for Christmas. Now these weren't just clothes off the rack, the clothes had to be stitched. And so once the material was picked, we'd be off to the tailor for measurements. It didn't stop there. India has a rich culture going back several thousands of years. And one of the key elements of that culture is food. Food and sweets. So as Christmas drew closer, we'd be part of a sweet-making exercise. Pots and pans would show up. Sugar, flour, and eggs were inevitable. Over the weeks that followed, we'd end up making a bonanza of sweets that include kalkals, neuros, and then we have bibik and other delicacies. And then it was time for decorating that spindly tree and wait for our gifts. And like kids all around the globe, we look forward to Christmas morning when we got back from church. But it was more than just the gifts. We'd be out in our new clothes. There'd be a stack of food that include different curries, pulao, and salad. And to me, Christmas Day was the most amazing day ever. And yet, it could have been a lot less exciting. Instead of this ramp up, we could have woken up to Christmas Day and find the tree all decorated. Of course, there would be gifts, there would be a great lunch, and there would be a lot of merriment. It would be a great day, but not have the same impact. Impact comes from pre-sale, from this buildup. Pre-sale or buildup builds this momentum that culminates on a single day and a single point in time. Without the build-up, the day is just another pleasant surprise. With the build-up, it's a roller coaster of emotions. Ask any bride. Most brides-to-be thrive in the build-up. Right after the engagement ring sits on their finger, the hectic plans unfold. Cakes, decorations, the band, the venue, the gown, the bridesmaids, the invitation. You get the idea, right? And then, several months later, there she is walking down the aisle. But look at the pre-sale. All her friends, her relations and her parents, not to speak of the groom, they're all there because of the pre-sale. So pre-sale is critical, but pre-sale is nothing without the event. The end point is what determines the pre-sale. If Christmas Day didn't exist, the pre-sale wouldn't matter. If the wedding day didn't exist, why bother? Welcome to episode number 3 on how to create an irresistible offer. We covered buffet versus specialty in the first episode, then we looked at exclusivity, and now we're looking at build-up or pre-sale. And what am I doing here? What I'm doing is giving you the excerpt from the book itself. There is a book on pre-sale, as you'd expect. It's expensive, as you'd expect. And what it does is it shows you specifically how and why the pre-sale works. It deconstructs it. But we'll talk more about that book later. Right now, let's get back to pre-sale. So what is pre-sale? Pre-sale is nothing but the event. The endpoint is what determines the pre-sale. If Christmas Day didn't exist, then pre-sale wouldn't matter. Again, if the wedding day didn't exist, why bother? The Wimbledon finals are an event. The release of Harry Potter book, event. Launch of a company, event. Oscars, event. Newborn baby, event. And yet, most of us don't create events. We create a product. We create a service. Then we write our sales letter, or we create some brochures. We send out a couple of emails and that's it. We're done. And then we're surprised that huge numbers of customers aren't buying our products or services in droves. We totally understand the concept of Christmas Day, Valentine's Day, the Oscars. But we're totally at sea when we have to create an event and then roll out that event successfully. Should it be a quick or a slow rollout? What are the elements involved? What lessons can we learn from the past? Is offline pre-sale different from online? These questions and more swirl in our heads, and often the answers are not as obvious as they seem. And this is what this teaser is all about, really. It's a little insight into the build-up, into the pre-sale factor. The most important thing to figure out, to write down on that piece of paper, is that pre-sale is an event. E-V-E-N-T. It's an event. Without the event, nothing happens. Let's figure out how this event plays a role in our lives. Let's start out with the first concept, which is the elements of pre-sale. In the year 1926, a German of Greek descent went to the United States for the second time. His name was Joseph Pilates. And it was in America that Joe set up that studio that would go on to become what we know quite well as the Pilates system. Now, Joe was practically unknown when he set up the studio. He didn't have a list of folks lining outside his studio. He was starting up from scratch. And so he did what you should do when starting up from zero. He found out where his audience hung out. And so he set up his studio in a boxing gym on 939 8th Avenue, in the same building as several other dance studios. This enabled him to attract dancers who were in need of rehabilitation. News of Joe's skill with injuries spread by word of mouth, and his client base just grew rapidly. His clientele included people in New York's high society, such as members of the Gimbel and Guggenheim families, along with movie stars such as Vivian Leigh, Sir Laurence Olivier, Katharine Hepburn, lots of others. He worked with doctors, circus performers, gymnasts, musicians, dancers, business people, tradesmen, and students. But contrary to what it may seem, he was fussy. He made his classes an event. As the legend goes, he would turn down people who called him in the early days. Apparently, he'd say something like this: No, can't fit you in. Too busy. Call back next week. And so he created a mystique around his studio, thus attracting the very cream of dancers, actors, and celebrities, who would then praise him to the sky. And it is in this story that we see the core elements of pre-sale. You can quickly spot how he got people to opt in and how there was a waiting list for an event in the future. Even something as mundane as signing up to an exercise class. And so Joe made the sign up to his class an event, and it had all the elements required of an event. But what are those elements? Let's find out, shall we? There are 5 things that you have to consider when creating pre-sale. The first is the idea, the second, the announcement, the third, the details, the fourth, the goodies, and the fifth is the event. Let's start off with the first one, which is the idea. The idea is simply a concept. It's nothing more than an idea. So let's suppose I'm going to have a cooking class later this year. I simply have an idea. I don't have to tell anyone about it, but there's no harm in sharing, so I share. Notice the ambiguity. There are no dates, no times, no specifics. It's just an idea. At this idea stage, you're not even making a statement to your audience. When a couple decides to marry, it's just an idea. There are no dates. There is no timeline. There's nothing. But surely there has to be something, when it comes to marketing at least. Customers don't just buy into stuff when there are no details, right? But you're not putting a stake in the ground. You're just letting an idea take shape. And that is the starting point. Just an idea, nothing else. It's vague, it's crazy. Yes, we know that, but doesn't matter. It needs to be that way. It's just an idea. Because the moment we have an idea, we can go to the second element, which is the announcement. Now, this stage has a little more information. It doesn't have to nail down any details. In fact, precise details are almost never needed early in the sequence. You can announce those precise details later, whenever you like. Right now, all you're doing is rolling out the elements in the pre-sale sequence. And this might seem very unnerving to you as the person who's introducing your product or service, but it's not unnerving to an audience. So let's look at a real example. Let's say I wanted to have an article writing course next year, and I just said it was next year. And now we're in November and it's next year, and maybe it's mid next year. So what's happened here are two things. The first is the idea. And the second thing is the announcement. You know that it's mid next year. You don't know any details. You don't know whether it's version 1 of it, version 2.0. You don't know anything about the article writing course. You just know it's coming up next year, mid next year. That's it. Or maybe I might announce that I'm going to do some stock cartoons. Now, I've been threatening to do this for a long time. I know this. If you're listening to the podcast, you know that I've been threatening to do this for many years. But the point is, let's say I decide in March something's going to come out. What is that something? Sure, you know, it's stock cartoons that you can use in your websites and brochures and blog, etc. But what kind of stock cartoons? What kind of resolution? You don't know any of that stuff. Does it matter? No, it doesn't matter. You're still excited as a customer. You're still interested. What is the article writing course about? What are the cartoons about? What are the stock cartoons about? So it's automatic for you to just get interested when an idea comes your way, when an announcement is made, and it doesn't matter that it's vague. But of course, you want details, and this takes us to our third step, which is the details. Now, technically, this is the third stage, but only because you're getting restless and everyone else is getting restless. So you, as the creator of the product or service, you're getting restless. You want to give details. And of course, everyone else wants to know the details. You can postpone exact details right until the very end. Some companies like Apple won't even give out a specific date, won't give out exact details until they're ready. And some companies will give out tons of details. We tend not to give out a lot of details. For instance, when we had a workshop several years ago, and it was about the uniqueness concept and how to make your business or your product stand out. But we just gave tentative dates. We gave venues, which was just the city itself. And then we gave a random price. And we said that was a 3-day workshop from Thursday to Saturday. So as you can see, even at that stage, there were no details, no specific details, just vague details. You don't need to give all the details. You need to give some of the details. And if you want to give all the details, then you can share them with your audience. But remember, this is build-up. This is interest. The less information you give, the more interesting it becomes to an audience. It seems very counterintuitive, but that's what it is. You're not hiding all of it, and you're not giving all of it. You're keeping a fair bit behind. And often it's because you have no clue yourself. So what we're going through is this whole concept of the build-up. And what we've done is we've looked at the idea, we've looked at the announcement, we've looked at the details. Vague details, but details nonetheless. The next thing is a factor of goodies. So what are goodies? Goodies can be split up into two categories. The first category is called snippets, and the second category is called samples. Snippets are bite-sized pieces of information. As you know more about your event, you can feed little bits of information to your audience. So let's say you're having a live event. You can give out information about the activities planned, or about a special speaker who's going to be at the event, or any such information that gets the attention of your audience. And the second is a series of samples. So samples are simply an insight into what will be available. Videos, audio, PDF, these tend to be online samples. But we'll also look at diverse industries, from restaurants to e-commerce products, where you can have other kinds of samples. What you need to know is that it's time to bring out the goodies from now until the day you sell the event. Finally, we get to the event itself. Well, it depends. When you're rolling out a pre-sale plan, the event is the day that you get folks to sign up. When you're having a baby, the event is the day the baby is born. But no matter what the event, this is the big day. So you have to go through these steps, which is the idea, the announcements, the details, which comprise of the snippets and the samples, and then finally, we get to the event. But these are just the 5 big markers. There are dozens of smaller events that also help you to pre-sell, and it all culminates on that one big day. The event is the biggest element of them all. Everything lines up for the event. You can roll out a product or service, not have any of this stuff, but now you've lost the advantage of pre-sale. And without the pre-sale, the event can come and go like a ship in the night. If you don't do this build-up, some folks may notice it, but most won't. And this is why most products or services get little or no response. And then there are others that get enormous response. When a product or service does really well, it's thanks to some meticulous planning and the rollout of the pre-sale. And just about anything can be made into an event. If you're selling razor blades, you can make the next edition of the razor blades an event. If it's beer you're selling, you can make a special tasting of beer an event. If you're in real estate and your clients come and go, you can still create an event through online information that they eagerly await. Every movie that's being launched is an event. There's a ton of pre-sale being done before the date itself. Actors and actresses, suddenly they find themselves having affairs. Suddenly they do wild and wonderful things. Suddenly they seem to show up on all the magazines, newspapers, and shows weeks before that event is launched. And what is that event? It's a new movie. Notice how you suddenly see a lot more of Tom Hanks. He's on every newspaper stand, he's on television, he's on all the shows, he's on radio. How did that happen? That's the pre-sale. That's the build-up to the event. The movie's going to come out. They're selling you the event in advance. It really doesn't matter what kind of business you have. Whether you own a hairdressing salon, you can create a makeover event. If you own a restaurant, you can create a special food event. If you own a bowling alley, you can create an event and pre-sell that event weeks or even months in advance. The key is to make that event something special, something different from the ordinary. So what's different from what you've been doing so far? Well, so far what you've done is you've had a product, you've had a service. You put it on a sales page. You sent out an email. Maybe you sent out several emails. Or maybe you just announced it to your clients at the last minute. There's no build-up, no pre-sale. And when you pre-sell, that very same product or service is now an event because you've driven everyone towards that point. Suddenly there's this brouhaha about it. Suddenly there is this, hey, what's this all about? Not a lot has changed with regard to the product or service itself. The product or service is exactly the same. The only thing that's changed is you've created pre-sale and you've created a specific time and a date to sign up. You've created an event. An event is one that starts on a specific date and a specific time. Let's take a simple example. Let's say you're baking a cake. In the past, you baked the cake. When everyone showed up for tea, you announced that the cake was about to be served. But there was no pre-sale. Pre-sale is when you start talking about the cake 2 weeks in advance. You drop hints. You talk about the ingredients you're buying. Now everyone knows about the cake being baked. And you've set a fixed time for the cake to be served. On Sunday at 5 p.m., you'll be serving the cake. And that's an event. No longer is it just a cake. Now it's an event with enormous build-up and pre-sale. And that's what will ensure that people show up and eat your cake and talk about it for months to come. And then await the next cake, the next baking event. As you can tell, pre-sale counts. It is the most critical thing towards selling your product and service. It's where the bride starts her journey right after she gets the ring. It's how Joe Pilates made his classes an event. But all of this is the build-up and very critical towards creating that factor of irresistibility. So let's summarize what we've done so far. The core elements of pre-sale are the idea, the announcement, the details, the goodies, and the event itself. So that's 5 things: idea, announcement, details, goodies, and the event. The idea is just the idea. You can share it with others or not at all. It's your starting point, and nothing needs to be revealed until you make the announcement. The announcement doesn't have to be packed with details. It can be sparse. It just gives the flavor of what's to come in future. There's no point in driving yourself crazy with details at this stage. The detail stage is, ironically, still not filled with details. You can have some details and not have all the information quite yet. You're still pre-selling, you know. You can reveal more details along the way. There's no hurry. That takes us to the goodie stage. And the goodie stage is where you have a ton of snippets, you have examples, or you have samples. Snippets are information and they kindle the imagination of your audience. And samples, they allow your audience a taste of what is to come. You can use both snippets and samples. And of course, if you have both of them, you should use both. Finally, it's the event that matters. But in a way, the event is not really the final stage. Once you have an idea, you're plotting backwards to the event launch. So while it might seem like the final stage, it's the most critical stage of all. It's the pivot. The event is what helps you put together the entire pre-sale sequence. Every well-launched product or service sells better if there's an event and a pre-sale sequence in place. You'd be a brave person to launch an important product or service without the pre-sale sequence in place. Now this takes us to the one thing that you can do. What is the one thing that you can do? This is a series of things that involve a fair amount of time, and I wouldn't recommend that you try to do any of it. What I would recommend you do is outline. You've got these 5 stages: the idea, the announcement, the goodies. Wait, let's run that sequence again. The idea, the announcement, the details, then the goodies, and finally the event. So make a linear chart across from left to right. Just draw a line. Put the event at the very start. What time and date is it going to be? Randomly. Don't worry about the exact details. And then, what is the idea? That's on the extreme left. When are you going to do the first announcement? What kind of snippets and samples? Just rough stuff. Don't worry about it. And even with the details, don't worry about it. You're just announcing a baby, announcing a wedding. You don't have to have all the details right now. You just have to have this concept that leads to something. And that's how you build up irresistibility. Clients who like your work and want your work will wait and will be very eager because they know you're baking that cake. They know that they love that cake. They know they're going to love it. They like the ingredients. They like the way you're going about stuff. They're interested. Just like you're interested in the article writing course or the cartoons that are coming up. This is how you build interest. You don't have to have any details. You just put it out there. And then you follow these 5 steps. If you listen closely, you can hear the rain outside. This is not a soundproof studio where I'm recording, so there's this nice patter of the rain and it's watering all the plants. And that's good because even though I'm the official gardener, we're leaving in a couple of weeks, actually, not even a couple of weeks, maybe about 10 days from now. We're headed to Nashville, Tennessee. We're doing the storytelling workshop there, and then we're going to Amsterdam. But when we come back, we're going to be on a bit of a break. You're going to get still a lot of the podcasts. What's going to happen in Feb is we're going to be working on a brand new psychotactics website. So that's on the cards, a bit of pre-sale here. We're going to have the article writing course next year, and we will put out all the courses and the products and services that we're going to do next year. So you look out for that document, and we'll probably put it in a podcast somewhere. But it's going to be out as soon as we have it on paper. And right now, the best thing you can do for yourself is get yourself a copy of the Brain Audit. If you're not a member of 5000 BC, join 5000 BC. And that's the best I can tell you. This book, the pre-sale book, it will also be available. It's not cheap. It's $400. That's how it is. Not everyone needs to have it. But when you have it, you realize how powerful it is because it shows you the exact sequence that you need to follow and how you need to go about creating all the samples and the examples and the snippets and everything else. So it's a really good book. It's one that we've used to sell to our audience, even though we've sold to very, very small audiences and with none of the strategic alliances and joint ventures and all the hoopla that you see online. So if you're interested in that book, look out for it. It will be out soon. Now, we have covered quite a lot. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to put together a separate podcast, and it will contain the summary of all of these 3 elements, which is the buffet versus specialty, the exclusivity, and this build-up or pre-sale. And look for that after this podcast. And it's time to go. It's still raining. I don't think I'm going to go for a walk today. Bye for now. Still listening? I'm talking about pre-sale, and I'm talking about how we went about creating this whole factor of pre-sale. But remember that pre-sale can be almost non-existent. When we started out, we had the Brain Audit. This is going back all the way to 2002. And we didn't know anything about pre-sale. We didn't know how to go about it, and we just put the Brain Audit up there. And it sold, but it sold very slowly. And eventually it sold a ton of stuff. It sold over $500,000 of that one book alone so far. But the point is that now we've had to figure out and do all of these different elements of pre-sale when we're selling a product or service. But we didn't have this situation. We didn't have this knowledge back in 2002. And that's why things were quite a bit slow at the start. And if you're wondering, well, did we start with it? No, we didn't start with it. And occasionally we've done something stupid, like we've just launched a product or service or a workshop without the pre-sale, and that doesn't work either. You get lazy sometimes, Everyone does, like today, because it's raining and I don't feel like going for a walk. So laziness can come into it, but most of the problem lies from this ignorance, and we didn't know it. And once we knew it, it really worked to our advantage. and it continues to work to our advantage. So there's a little blip from psychotactics just telling you that it wasn't always this great thing, this great machine that moves forward. But it's also been some guesswork along the way. Now I prefer not to have the guesswork. I'd rather have the steps laid out for me, all in a row. That's it from the 3-month vacation and psychotactics. If you haven't told a friend about it yet, please do so. Bye for now.